Essential for Living is a life skills curriculum and assessment instrument. It's designed for teachers, speech language pathologists, occupational therapists, curriculum specialists in a school district, residential managers in a program for adults, and behavior analysts, any of those individuals. Let's talk for a moment about what might have brought you to Essential for Living. Maybe you're working with children with autism, maybe Down syndrome, maybe children with other sorts of developmental disabilities, you see. And some of those individuals have spoken words, some not. Some struggle with understanding concepts, abstract concepts like numerals and letters, printed words, clocks, calendars, and spoken words used in everyday conversation. See? Or it's also possible that you are working with an adult or adults, and they have some of the same struggles. And what's happened for you are two bottom lines. Number one, your children or your adults are making very little or no progress despite months and months of instruction. And bottom line two, you are becoming more aware that the skills you are teaching are not going anywhere. That is, these skills are unlikely for your children or adults to be a part of everyday living either now or in the future. It may be that the children that you're working with, the curriculum or assessment instrument that guides their instruction compares their performance to typical development, as does the Early Start Denver model, the ABLES, or the VB-MAP. Or maybe it compares their performance to academic standards, like the Common Core State Standards, the State Academic or Alternate Assessment Standards, or the curriculum known as Unique Learning Systems. And while these curricula might be very valuable for many children for whom acquiring academic skills is a reasonable expectation, it's becoming more and more apparent to you that these instruments do not result in skills of everyday living and are not suitable for the individuals with whom you are working. And as I said a moment ago, maybe you're working with adults and the same situation. Maybe you're giving them skills or you're giving them tasks to do that keep them busy, but they're not leisure skills of interest to them, nor skills of everyday living. And again, it's becoming more apparent to you that these skills are not useful and will not improve the quality of their life. Enter Essential for Living, 3,100 skills, with a reference point not of typical development or academic standards, but with a reference point of everyday living and ultimately a quality of life, a high quality of life. For us, this has always been a mission to bring skills of everyday living to individuals with limited skill repertoires and thereby improve the quality of their life. Now, let's look for a minute at some skills suggested by reference points of typical development or academic skills and compare these to skills with the reference point of quality of life and skills that are included in Essential for Living. Example, touching a picture of a car when asked to do so. That is an item that is found in curricula where the reference point is typical development. But that's not the kind of skill that would happen in everyday living. Nobody would expect you to touch a picture of a car when asked to do so. But they might expect you to follow a direction to come here when asked to do so that you're safe, especially in a crowded area. Another example of a skill is rote counting, which is which can be found in curricula that are referenced to typical development or academic skills. And sometimes, um, people are saying, well, that's important. You need to learn to count rotely. The problem is it would never, ever be required of you later on. But somebody would ask you, give me 3 or 4 spoons. Then you would have to do it, you see? And so we have a skill and essential for living for kids that have difficulty with that, because many of the kids would, you'd say, give me 4 spoons, and the kiddo would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, keep right on going, and wouldn't know where and when to stop. But if you teach them to count backward, which is a skill and essential for living, if you say, give me 4 spoons, the person starts with 4, 4, 3, 2, 1. How do they know where to stop? They always stop, no matter the count. They always stop when they hear themselves say 1. And it's a beautiful way to accomplish a very functional form of counting. How about another example? Answering a feature function class question like, tell me something you wear, which is typically found in a curriculum like the BBMAP. Reference to typical development. Who would ever ask you that question? The answer is almost never would that happen, and no one would ask that. But what about answering a question that somebody would actually ask you? What do you like with your juice? You're going to have lunch. What do you like with your juice? One last example, reading words from a list. This is often part of curricula that are referenced to academic skills. But what about kids that have never learned to read? How would they deal with words on a list? We have a skill in Essential for Living where you match the words from a shopping list to items in a store, so that the learner can participate in shopping and never needs to learn to read the words at all. They can learn to match the word on the list with either an item on the store shelf or the package on the store shelf, whichever it is. Now that we've had sort of a brief glance of what might be an essential for living, let's take a little deep dive into this pretty amazing instrument. The first thing to do, we need to purchase a handbook. So it gives you some information there. You go to essentialforliving.com, you go to the store, and you can purchase a handbook. Everyone will need one of those. Some people, when they first get it, they read the very first page on the first left-hand page, what to expect and how to get started. Others use the user guide, which there is a link to here, and which you can find on the essentialforliving.com. Others will take the handbook and go to pages 28 and 39, and they will get right into their first quick assessment. And it only takes just a very few minutes of reading if you choose to do that. However, many people decide to access a form of online on-demand training. We have courses through the Behavior Academy, Behavior Live, and Behavior Development Solutions. Or you can also arrange a live online or in-person training by contacting us at the information that you see on the screen, the emails, or the phone number. Now, prior to attending a training, whether you do one of the online versions or whether you have us in person, we would suggest the following. Look at pages 1 to 3 of the handbook, just pages 1 to 3. Page 1 describes what? It describes the French expression raison d'être, the reason for being. The page 1 describes the reason there is an EFL. Why is it important that there be an EFL? Pages 2 and 3 describes the instrument itself, describes the content. I'm going to scroll through a little bit of what you will see on pages 2 and 3. You can see there are 7 skill domains. 7 different categories of skills, you see? And in each of those categories, the skills, how are they sequenced? Now, remember, they're not sequenced according to the 3-month skills, 6-month, 9-month, 18-month, and so forth. They're not referenced to typical development. They're not sequenced that way. They're not also not sequenced by academic. So it's not the preschool and then the kindergarten and then the grade 1 and grade 2. It's not sequenced that way. So how is it sequenced? It's sequenced from must have to should have, too good to have, too nice to have, with respect to what? A high quality of life. That's what it's referenced to. So the must have skills are really important for you to have any kind of a quality of life. Uh, uh, so those are the must have skills, you'll see, have another name. For emphasis, they are called the essential 8. And you see them making requests, waiting after making a request, accepting the removal of things that you prefer. Other examples are making transitions, sharing, and taking turns. Number 4 is completing required and effortful tasks of daily living. These are things you already know how to do. But will you do them readily when someone asks you to? 5 is accepting no. We kind of all know what that is. 6 is following directions related to health and safety. Come here, hold my hand, walk with me. See? Wait at the curb. Don't go across the street. See? Then 7 is completing daily living skills. How about things every day? Are you eating the right kinds of food? Are you brushing your teeth? Can you wash your hands? Can you use the restroom effectively and efficiently? 8 is tolerating situations related to health and safety. All sorts of things that you would need to tolerate every day. Can you tolerate physical prompts? You see, can you tolerate going into the doc's office when you see somebody in a white lab coat? That sort of thing. Then, after the instrument had been out for a number of years, we realized that we had made an error, that we had not included the leisure skills as part of the must-have skills and essential for living. So we have corrected that. And now we refer to the essential 8 skills plus leisure skills at home and in the community as the necessary 9 skills. Now, after you have completed your reading or attended a training, here's what we suggest that you do. Send an email to Liz Mayer, liz@eflapp.com, and request a free trial of the Essential for Living app. Then log in and complete your first quick assessment with a child with whom you are working. You can also refer to pages 39 to 41 of the handbook for any assistance that you might need with the quick assessment. You'll see it now on your screen. You see the little grid. What is the quick assessment? It is activity 1 of an initial assessment. Again, you can look for this on page 28 of the EFL handbook. This activity is conducted by interviewing somebody who knows the learner well. And based on their answers, it doesn't suggest a score. What does it do? It suggests where the skill deficits might be. Here's an example about answering the question, the tendency to make requests. And here's an example of a person, and here's what the answer to the question was. The person who knew the learner very well said, this learner makes requests by exhibiting problem behavior. Or maybe the learner makes requests by leading others to items. In either case, it suggests what? It suggests that the skill deficits, our skill numbers are 1 to 5, are 6, and are 7 to 8. And you will see that it's in the blue domain, which is domain 1. I'll scroll back now to an earlier page, and you'll see that. As you can see, the domains of Essential for Living. Domain 1 is blue, and all the skills start with R. Once you start to use Essential for Living, this will become very easy and very familiar to you. Okay? Sometimes that it might be that two different answers adequately answer a question. So rather than going back and forth between one or the other, just put them both in. We're not worried about validity and reliability in the sense of a psychological assessment. We're worrying about collecting information that will help us build a program for a learner that will make a difference in their life. So after you've completed the quick assessment, what can you do? Well, let's think for a minute. What's now going to be the outcome of the quick assessment? Are you going to get a score? Yeah, you can look back and see the grid, well, how many ones and twos and threes and fours you have. Yes. Yeah, ones and twos tend to mean there's a substantial skill deficit. Threes and fours means there's less of a deficit or no deficit at all. You can look at that if you like, but that's not the most important outcome of a quick assessment. The most important outcome of a quick assessment is a list of possible skill deficits. And that's what you will get. You will not get a score other than that little grid, but you will get a list of the learner's possible skill deficits. Now, the reason we call them possible is because we haven't put the learner in the circumstance in which the skill would be expected to occur and recorded their initial performance, because that's what we would need to do to complete an assessment. But right now, they're on the possible skill deficits list. So when you come out of your quick assessment, when you come out, you have your list of possible skill deficits. You can do one more thing if you like, but it's not required. You can go to activity 3. You'll find that on page 28 again, back to page 28. That'll be a page that you'll go back and forth with quite often. See, go back to what's activity 3? Well, if you want to, you can scan through the other skill domains. See, you can scan through. Let's go back up and see them. See, you can scan through domain 2, listener responses, and 4, daily living skills, and 6, tolerating skills. You can scan through those domains and look for items. And maybe your learner's name is Charlie, and you look at, geez, that's Charlie. And you're pointing to a particular skill set. Oh, that fits Charlie. That's Charlie needs that, I think. So let's add that to the possible skill deficits list. Now, when you look through this instrument, you're going to find some skills, and it might, when you see them, it might be a little disconcerting to you. You might see some skills that wouldn't apply to your learner at all. But remember, the reason they're there is because they will apply to some learners. Some learners, the extent of whose deficit is more severe than the child that you're working with. Their deficit is incredibly more severe and more involved. And so don't let that concern you. Just remember that, well, your child may not need that, but there are other children out there who will. And then the final stage of an assessment is to take the skills that are now your possible skill deficits, and one by one you put the learner in the circumstance in which the skill is expected to occur, and you record their initial performance. By the way, if you start out using the quick assessment, if you get the free copy of the app from Liz, and you start out with the quick assessment, you see, you could do all of this right in the app. Now, next question you have to yourself, okay, have we completed the assessment? Are we ready to start teaching? The answer is not quite. One more thing to do. We need to determine if the learner has an effective method of speaking. So does your learner use spoken words effectively or efficiently? Does your learner have an alternative method of speaking? And is it an effective one? If your child needs an alternative method, but they don't have one, what method might be consistent with your child's repertoire and their required audience? And then could we select a method that would endure and last a lifetime? This is where at chapter 6 of the Essential for Living Handbook, Practitioner's Handbook, is particularly useful. It was developed by Troy Fry and Pat McGreevy, but also by Janine Shapiro, who is a very experienced speech and language pathologist and a behavior analyst. And we used to have a very elaborate procedure. We go through this uh, uh, chapter. It's 70 pages, by the way, to 1/4 the size of the entire Essential for Living curriculum. We'd go through this procedure. Some of you, if you have an older book, you might have a piece of acetate or clear mylar that came inside the front cover of the book. And that's the instrument that we use to go through this manually to, number one, determine, does the child need an alternative method of speaking, or, and then if you need one, what might that be? Or rather than just somebody plopping PECs or plopping a tablet or whatever in front of somebody and without any analysis at all, which is what happens lots of times. It does. So you can go through that if you like, but most people would take the following option. We have a brand new app. It's called the AMS, Alternative Method of Speaking Selection Tool. And you can go to our website and get the AMS selection tool. Click on it. Guess what? It's free. You can use it as often as you want with as many children as you want. Okay. It was developed by Data Makes the Difference, which is one of the partners of Essential for Living. What the AMS selection tool will go through something called the vocal profiles. This will help us determine, does your learner need an alternative method of speaking? See, most people think that's a really easy question to answer, and you don't need any analysis. But here's the problem. What if the child has an echoic repertoire? What if they can repeat words? There is a behavioral procedure that will get them to independent, spontaneous spoken words that many people in the world aren't aware of and don't know about. It came from verbal behavior, which is one of the many, many reasons why B.F. Skinner's analysis of verbal behavior is very relevant for our children and adults. So anyway, we'll go through that. Do you need an alternative method? And then what it will do, it will say, okay, if you need one, let's go select one. Let's go pick one. One that takes into account the learner's current skill set, their skill repertoire. You see? Let's match a learner to a method. See? And then let's see if one looks like it matches the learner, then let's say, okay, but wouldn't it be nice if the method also retains some of the advantages of spoken word, because they are huge. If you can get to spoken word, that's the BMW of effective communication. It is. I mean, that's what you would want to get to if you could. So let's see if this method retains some of the advantages of spoken word. And then the last piece we want to know is, does it give you a large or a small audience? Are you an individual who's going to be out and about the community and is going to need to talk with hundreds of people? Or are you somebody whose life and whose movement in the community is going to be somewhat restricted? You won't need hundreds and hundreds of people. Most of the people you're going to be in contact with are people with whom you are very familiar. And so it's going to take all of those things into account. Right? This particular example that you see is one where there were two methods that the method selected out. First off, they selected about 10 or 12, and then it got down to these two. One was standard, adapted, and idiosyncratic signs, and the other was a portable booklet that you could use to exchange pictures And it was a booklet that was worn by the learner, so the book was never separated from the learner. And when you take a look at what the analysis was, you see both match the learner's repertoire pretty well. Signs a little bit more than the pictures, but not much more. And then you take a look at the advantages of spoken word, and again, the sign has a few more advantages of spoken word that were retained than does the pictures. But again, not overwhelming. But here's the problem, or could be the problem. The sign, the method involving signing gives you a smaller audience. Pictures gives you a larger audience. So there, what you have to factor into it is this a learner who's going to need a larger audience? Because sometimes discriminating the pictures can be difficult too. You see? These are what behavior analysts call conditional discriminations, can be difficult for some of our learners. So do you need a larger audience, or is a smaller audience that's familiar going to be quite okay with you? And then on page 65 to 67 of the handbook, there's a very important couple of diagrams. And this is what these diagrams deal with. And they say, listen, once you've selected a method, let's put some criteria on it that ensure that it will last a lifetime, because there is a very high abandonment rate of alternative methods of speaking. Speech pathologists all over the world report this. I wish we could show you some published data, but we can't because, to our knowledge, there isn't any. But you go and ask experienced speech and language pathologists, and everywhere you go, they will say lots of people, sometimes as many as half of the people who have an alternative non-vocal method of speaking abandon it later on. So what we want to put is to make sure our learners don't abandon it. You see? So we have what we call the CAFE criteria. CAFE is just a convenient acronym. It stands for, is the method continuously available? Continuously available. Is it frequently used? And is it effortless? And all three criteria must be present. You must meet all three criteria in order to carry forward. To make sure that all of this time and energy that's put into finding an alternative method of speaking for somebody who is probably not going to be capable of using spoken words. Well, boy, this thing better be there, and it better last a lifetime. Otherwise, we're going to be working with somebody for several years, and then someday we're going to see them in the store and they have nothing. And they're trying to communicate with mom and dad, and they don't have any way to do it. And they and mom and dad are both extraordinarily frustrated because the method they once had, they don't have anymore. Before we start teaching, let's say we've got an effective method of speaking now, we've got our list of possible skill deficits, and we're beginning to put the learner in the circumstances in which the skills are expected to occur. Then we have a choice. Either we can score the learner's performance and subsequent progress according to the method suggested by Essential for Living, or we can use a method with which we are familiar. And you can go either way for you. Here's an example of ours. The method of recording performance and progress that we suggest gives you two advantages, at least two. First of all, it will help you measure small increments of learner progress, very tiny increments of learner progress. And then it will not stop with skill acquisition. It will go to fluency, generalization, and maintenance over time. It will go to all of those. And all of those we know are essential ingredients. They are essential components. So it will go to all of those. But again, you can decide whether or not you want to use our system or you want to use your own, at least for the time being. You'll see both in the app, and we have these data sheets online, and they're free. You can go to our website and down it, you see. And what they are is they're the same performance criteria that you saw over here, exactly the same. Only now, instead of horizontal in a scoring manual, on a data sheet, they're vertical. And guess what? The data sheet becomes self-graphing. Now, what you see here is the first opportunity of the day was recorded. We also have other data sheets that you can use, and I'm sure that many of you have your own where you can record a learner's performance on additional opportunities or trials later in the day. But this one is the first opportunity, and as you can see, over a period of time, you can see the progress, and it becomes and then you have the scoring manual there, and so you can either use the app, and it takes care of everything, the scoring manual and the data sheets, or you can use the paper data sheets from our website. And if you do that, see, then you're going to need two scoring manuals. Well, actually, you're going to need only one of two. The red and white one only has the must-have skills in it, and the blue and white one has all the skills in the instrument. Most people pick the blue and white one. Although if you have children or adults they have very limited repertoires and severe problem behavior, the red one might do you quite well for quite some time. Right? The scoring manuals have laminated covers. They'll last for many years, and you can buy them at a discount if you buy more than 20, I think it is. Okay, so then you can decide whether you're going to use a method of your choosing or a method that is suggested by Essential for Living. But before you make that decision, don't forget about fluency. Don't forget about fluency. Fluency is a long way from 80%. It's a long way. Fluent skills will last you a lifetime. My professor used to say, you couldn't forget them if you wanted to. All of us have learned, at my generation especially, to memorize things when we were little kids. Sometimes we even memorized them in other languages. Like for me, it was Latin. And I didn't even know what the thing I was saying meant exactly, but I'll be able to do it the rest of my life with no hesitation at all. At all. So it's very, very, very important to think about the fluency part. It's ignored by a lot of people, especially in the field of behavior analysis. It has become an 80% to 100% world. And that's not doing any favor to our children at all. So think about that. Maybe you might try your own method for a while and maybe come back later and try ours, or give ours another little try. As you continue with Essential for Living, you'll probably find the teaching manual helpful. The teaching manual contains teaching procedures that are especially helpful with children with more limited repertoires, because oftentimes they can be very challenging to teach, how to prompt, how to fade, that sort of thing. We're going to talk about children and adults answering questions that would actually occur, which they would want and need to answer. Children and adults responding effectively to printed words without ever learning to read. Children and adults with skills of everyday living acquired with go-together matching, and yet without language skills. Children and adults tolerating situations and later learning the skill that are part of that or those same situations. And children and adults with skills of everyday living that excite them and us in ways all of us have yet to imagine. I have seen some fluent performances over the last several years that, without hesitation, took my breath away. Just incredible. to watch some children and adults accomplish something that they were so proud of and so pleased that they could do it. Uh, it's no different than any of the rest of us. We want to have things we're good at. We want to have skills in our repertoire, things we're good at doing. Everybody wants that. And our children want that very much too. So I hope this little video has been helpful to you. Uh, Please, before I leave, let's review a couple of things. First off, we have Q&A sessions. At the time of this video, they're occurring from 12 o'clock to 1 p.m. New York time on Tuesdays, but that time may change over a period of time. But if you go on our website and you look for the Q&A sessions, you'll find them. They won't be difficult to find. Come to one of our Q&A sessions or come to 20 of them if you like. We have people that have come to that many. Come as often as you like. They're free. If you want some training, if you are a school district and you're not sure that maybe of your staff might adapt well to this, and you want one of us to come and do a quick little Zoom chat with your staff and answer all the questions that they have, please call us on that. We'll be happy to do it. I do it lots of times every year. It's quite common for us. And remember that in thinking about Essential for Living, this is all about quality of life. This is all about making somebody's life better. From a very young child to a child who needs a transition plan, so that the day that they graduate from high school is not the saddest day imaginable, because you know the child is prepared, adequately prepared, to go out there in the community and be a functioning part of that community, be able to do things they want and need to do, things that keep them safe and things that keep them fulfilled. Thank you all very much. I appreciate you, and let us hear from you. Thank you.